good night, everyone. It is March the 21st. Let's get it, man. Let's get it. So today I want to talk a little bit about. I want to talk about the power dynamics, right? Because we're still talking about dating, which is important. You know, it's a natural part of life for a boy to meet girl or a man to meet woman, right? But uh, something we need to not forget. Well, need to not ignore, I should say, is the power dynamics and the shift, because there's a shift happening, and to be honest, it starts from school. It starts from boys and girls in school, how boys learn versus how girls learn and whatnot. And we're gonna go through it, but I got some stuff I want to go through first. First, I'm gonna go through the first video. You have the first video there. We'll go through it, see what they're saying about. This is pretty much about the dating dynamics, right? So we'll see what he's saying, and then we'll make some takes on it.
Says they have said, I have enough of these modern women in America. We sick of it. There's no reason to invest in these women whatsoever. I want you to check out this video we're gonna review because boy, even with statistics, it's getting worse for these modern women.
I have been so hesitant to post about this for two reasons. Number one, I don't like negativity and I don't want to be like the bearer of bad news. Number two, I didn't want to believe it. But after doing so much research and getting a lot of messages, I'm going to just deliver the unvarnished truth to you guys. I'm just going to lay it out straight. We're in a dating crisis. Not basically, we are. That's what's happening. So let me look at my research here because I don't want to mess it up. So men looking for casual dates and our relationships is down 50%. 50.
Okay, so she's saying that a lot of you men, you said you have checked out the process. You've checked out. Now, what she's not talking about is a lot of you men that flew out of here too. So you're not even on the dating scene because you're overseas trying to find you a wife over there. So now it's down 50%. Some men to say, I'm not even trying to fool these women. You know why they don't have to date you? Because a lot of them is just too easy to get. They'll lay down with you the first day. And listen, as a man get his rocks off or whatever, then that's all he needs. Let me tell you something. The dating process will go down to 100% checked out if tricking was legal in the U.S. If they made tricking legal, because notice they're making everything else legal, but they ain't making that legal. If they made that legal, none of them men would date y'all. What for? Because they can just go buy what they want to buy, get their little rocks off, and that's the end of it. They wouldn't, man. Boy, I'm telling you.
So, all right. So that's
legal in the United States.
Basically the reason I want that is pretty much true what's happening in the dating market, but it's not really like men don't really have a lot of options out here when it comes to women because you have women who are average who would rather stay single than to date an average man. So and we've seen it especially on the Kevin Samuel show. If you've seen a lot of the women on there, in my opinion, were like 5s and 6s most of the time. And they're saying that they want a man that they find attractive. Yeah, a lot of times they want a man who's tall and they want a man who is making a certain amount of money. And that is average woman, even if she got kids, right? So even an average looking woman with kids is very picky, right? So I wouldn't say that the dating market is really in favor of the men. A lot of the, to be honest, let's just be real. Let's cut through the BS. To be honest, a lot of the women are just holding out. They're saying, if I don't get what it is that I want, I'll just hold out, right? And a lot of women, to be honest, are saying, I'll just be single. I'll just stay single. That's really what's happening. A lot of the women, whether they put on a face like, they're okay with the status quo and how things are going, and maybe when they go home maybe they want more. At the end of the day, they are being choosy. They do have options. Your average woman does have options. And this is not about me picking sides. It's just what I'm seeing before my eyes, right? So there's another video. This is the main video. I want to talk about really though the dynamics in like education and how it's shifting also in favor of women as if in the next, I think they say women are going up to about like 40-50% of the workforce. So and the way and they're saying
people warned me against,
and they're saying men are leaving the workforce. So if you have women growing in the workforce and men dwindling in numbers in the workforce, then 10 years, 20 years, you can do the math and you can see that most likely that's going to rise. So let's see what this guy has to say.
Writing a book about boys and men because it's such a fraught subject, particularly in politics right now, and because so many people were afraid that merely drawing attention to the problems of boys and men was implying somehow less effort being paid to girls and women, that it's framed as zero sum, and it's sort of a whose side are you on question, and you have to be on one side or the other rather than just being on the side of human flourishing. One of the real challenges here is that if there are men.
So he's saying that in let's say in the education system and whatever that's happening now, if you even raise the question about boys and how they're doing, there's a stigma against people who do that, who are looking out for the well-being of boys. And the question would be, is it that they're unaware of the fact that boys are not doing so well in education, or is it that it's purposely being ignored? That's to me what the question would be. But let's see what else he has.
Missing from certain crucial areas of our society and our economy. That makes it harder for other men and boys to flourish in those areas. We have an education system that has a dearth of male teachers. We have a labor market where the jobs that are growing fastest are ones where we have the fewest men.
So there's a lack of male teachers and male leadership in these schools. Is that also by accident, or is this purposely? Like, I'm not going to come here and give my opinion and try to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm just raising a question, right? Is that just by accident? Because there's a good amount of males who are there that can do the job, but especially in the last, I'd say 20 years, they've got males out of the education system, especially when it comes to the younger ages, for reasons that I could understand, but we're not going to get into that now. But let's see what else he has to say.
And in families, there's the growth in what you might call the dad deficit or fatherlessness. As men are struggling in each of those areas, what you'll see is it'll be harder for other men to follow in their footsteps. It's harder for boys to flourish if their fathers aren't engaged. It's harder for men to enter occupations where there aren't men. It's harder for boys to do well at school where there are no male teachers to be seen. And so there's a very real danger that unless we act quite soon, that we will set in train something of a vicious cycle. I'm Richard Reeves. I'm a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, and my latest book is Of Boys and Men, Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why That Matters, and What to Do About it. The overall picture is that on almost every measure, at almost every age, and in almost every advanced economy in the world, the girls are leaving the boys way behind, and the women leaving the men. What nobody expected was that girls and women wouldn't just catch up to boys and men in education, but would blow right past them and keep going. Everyone was very focused, quite rightly, on getting to gender equality, getting to gender parity. It's not that long ago where there was a...
So they say since like the education, because since they integrated boys and girls into this whole education system, girls have been doing better, especially in the classroom setting and all that. Academically, the numbers were rising slow when it first started, but as we get to the present time, those numbers rapidly started to increase. So it started. So girls kick our ass in school. Just put it that way. So let's see what else it is.
Huge gender gap the other way, and there was huge focus, correctly, in the 70s and 80s to really promote women and girls in education. But the line just kept going, and nobody predicted that. Nobody was saying, what if gender inequality reemerges in just as big a way as now, in some cases bigger, but the other way around? And to some extent, everyone's still trying to get their head around this new world where, at least in education, when you talk about gender inequality, you're pretty much always talking about the ways in which girls and women are ahead of boys and men. And that's happened in a very, very short period of human history. So if you look at the US, for example, in the average school district in the US, girls are almost a grade level ahead of boys in English and have caught up in math. If we look at those with the highest GPA scores, the top 10%, 2/3 of those are girls. If we look at those at the bottom, 2/3 of those are boys. When it comes to going to college, there's a 10% gap in college enrollment, a similar size gap in completing college, conditional on enrolling. And the result of those trends is that the gender gap in getting a college degree is now wider than it was in 1972, but the other way around. So in 1972, when Title IX was passed to promote more gender equality in education, there was a 13 percentage point gap in favor of men getting college degrees. Now there's a 15 percentage point gap in favor of women getting college degrees. So the gender inequality we see in college today is wider.
You see where that's the beginning of the women excelling ahead of men. So that's something that you got to pay attention to, because if men are leaving, because men are going into trade, so that is good. But the thing is, we have to work longer hours, right? The trades that we would get into, in order for us to be able to make 100,000 and over, we'll be working pretty much all day, all night. You see what I'm saying? The difference is someone who is getting education, and the further they go along in education, the less time they will have to put in for that same $100,000 that you damn there have to work your whole life to make, right? So let's see what else here.
Than it was 50 years ago. It's just the other way around. There's quite a fierce debate about the differences between male and female brains. And in adulthood, I think there's not much evidence that the brains are that different in ways that we should worry about or that are particularly consequential. But where there's no real debate is in the timing of brain development. It is quite clear that girls' brains develop more quickly than boys' brains do, and that the biggest difference seems to occur in adolescence. So what happens is in adolescence, we develop what neuroscientists call the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex of our brain is sometimes known as the CEO of the brain. It's the bit of your brain that says you should do your chemistry homework rather than going out to party. It's the bit of your brain that says it is worth maintaining a high GPA because it will help you get to college, which might help you in the future. And that bit of the brain develops considerably earlier in girls than in boys, between 1 and 2 years earlier. Partly.
The thing is, though, it could benefit society if men and women had that dance in society, in the workforce, in the economy. But it's this triangle thing where people are competing against each other, and the people on top are putting certain people above other people, and that's why we're having this back and forth with each other, because we're trying to fight each other for position. So the man saying, really, I am the man, I should be the head, I should be running the household. And really what the women are doing is they're trying to advance as much as possible to level that playing field, right? So that they could make more money. Because the more money you make, the more you could go negotiate. That's what they learned in this world, and that's really how this world works. The more money a person makes, the more they can negotiate in anything, right? Even in a relationship. So that's what is making the change. But there was something else. What else? There was something else that I was. But the thing is, though, we progress in physically. And that's what had men above women, because to make money you had to be physical, right? That was all physical work. Now all the physical work is done, and now we're going to more brain work, right? So now when you go to more brain work, and I don't think it's really that the girls are smarter, but it's just that the way that the system, especially the school system, is designed, girls excel better in that system. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. And I think they could definitely find other ways to get boys more engaged in academics, right? Boys are more hands-on. I think if they had more what could I say, like lessons and classes where they could be more hands-on, get out there, even for the girls too. I don't think the girls mind getting their hands on things, but I think boys would probably more excel in that area, right? So let's see what else he has to say.
Because girls go into puberty a bit earlier than boys, and that seems to trigger some of this development. What that means is that if you have an education system that rewards the ability to turn in homework, stay on task, worry about your GPA, prepare for college and so on, then just structurally, that's going to put an advantage the group whose brains have developed earlier in those particular areas. And that turns out on average to be girls. I think it's a great irony of women's progress that by taking the brakes off women's educational opportunities and aspirations, we've revealed the fact that the education system is slightly structured against.
So when they say the girl's brain has developed, right? And that's the thing, when you're thinking about the system, that the school system, the way it is designed, where you sit down, you got to think down, she is benefiting more from that system than the boy is. The boy is not getting as much from that system because, like I said, we're more hands-on. We're sitting down for 6 or 7 hours a day. It's really not natural for a boy, right? That's really the truth, and it's all proven. But there's a lot more we could look at, but let's just see what he has to say for the rest.
Against boys and men, because of these differences in the timing of brain development. But it took the women's movement to show that, because the natural advantages of women in education were impossible to see when women's aspirations were being capped by a sexist society. Now that those caps have been largely removed, we can see that it's boys and men who are at a disadvantage in the education system. At the risk of sounding boring, let's collect the data first so we know what we're dealing with here. I do think that we should be strongly encouraging boys to start school a year later than girls. I think that should become the default in many school districts because of the developmental gap there is between boys.
Now that just sounds insane to me, honestly. Like I like what this guy has to say, but Richard Reeves, I like what he has to say, but that letting boys start later, that doesn't even sound like it's achievable. Like, what are parents gonna do? Say, okay, I'm gonna, because you know what most parents, or especially single parents, like single mothers, you have a higher percentage of single mothers, and people who raise children in a two-parent household. But many of them are working. You have two-parent households where both of the parents are working, and the mother really can't afford to take that time off. So how would she be able to keep the boy back a year? I mean, the better idea for me is to allow the boy to start school in a different setting. Maybe not in a school, sit down, take notes, write essays and all that stuff. How about allow them to get out there and get their hands on things? They could start their school year like that, right? They should continue it like that, but instead of keeping them out of school for a year and letting the girls. That just doesn't sound. I don't see how that makes sense to me. But let's see what else here is.
Boys and girls, because boys' brains mature more slowly, then them starting school a year later would mean that they were developmentally closer to being peers with the girls in the classroom. We
Yeah, but
need
to me,
a lot more male teachers.
they just
It's-
be a year behind. I mean, they just be a year more behind. The girls would have started earlier, and they wouldn't have started. So it's like you're telling someone to start a race that in order to win the race, maybe you should wait and let the person get a head start. Does that make any sense? All right, let's see what else is.
Striking that the teaching profession has become steadily more female over time. Only 24% of K-12 teachers now are male. That's down from 33% in the 80s. And fewer men are applying to teacher training year on year. And so we've seen this steady shift towards a close to an all-female environment. That has all kinds of consequences for the ethos of the school, for the way we deal with different kinds
So if they're saying that the males in the school system are dropping, that means that the boys going to school, if they keep doing it the way they're doing it, there's going to be less and less male leadership in those schools, and the numbers are just going to keep dropping. So let's see what else.
kinds of behavior among boys and girls, for example. And so we need a very serious and intentional effort to get more men into teaching. The third thing I would do in this world where I have significant power to dictate policies would be significantly more investment in vocational education and training. That is an area where we do seem to see better results for boys and men on average, and one that's woefully underinvested in the US. The US has really bet most of its dollars on a very academic, a very narrow route towards success, and less emphasis on vocational training. And that has actually put boys and men
that's very
at a disadvantage.
true. Very true. Yeah, no, I'm just saying that's 100%.
High schools are actually a really good way to help more boys and men. I think one of the challenges with this debate is that if you're talking to women and men who are, say, at the top of the economic ladder, 4-year college degrees, decent incomes, they look around and they don't see some of these issues. But that's not the same for working class men. That's not the same for men lower down the economic ladder. So there's a danger that we're so busy, to borrow Sheryl Sandberg's phrase, so busy leaning in that we don't look down. The reality for men further down the ladder is very different.
Yeah, so pause.
The economic trend.
I like what he said about the vocational, because letting men learn those skills, because men, we don't mind working. We'll work, and we'll work heavy hours too. We just want to be paid good for a decent wage for those hours, right? So that's why we'll get, if we start early, getting those trades and getting up and getting up the ladder in those trades, whether it's construction or whatever it may be, that's a good thing. And women could do what they're doing, and there could be like a dance, where you could work together. You see what I'm saying? But it doesn't look like that's what's happening right now. But yeah, let's see what else is.
Trends for men have turned downwards along 4 dimensions. One is wages. Most men today earn less than most men did in 1979. In employment, with a drop in labor force participation of 8 percentage points, which means 9 million men now of prime age are not working. We've seen a drop in occupational stature, and so there are now more men working in employment areas which are seen as lower status than they were in the past. And we've also seen a drop in the acquisition of skills, the kinds of skills and education that boys and men need. If boys don't get educated...
Another thing we got to discuss, though, is what men in these jobs should be being paid, like your policemen, your garbage men, what else? There's a lot of things. Your men who fight in the army, these men should be compensated for what they offer to society, because without these things, these are just as important as your doctors, physicians or whatever, and your lawyers. So maybe we need to re-examine that. But Let's see what else is.
Men don't get skilled, they will struggle in the labor market. And across all of those domains, we've seen a downwards turn for men in the last 4 or 5 decades. And so the way in which social class divides have opened up, economic inequality has widened, is really important to understand in the context of gender inequality. If we only focus on gender gaps, then we miss the fact that both men and women at the top have done increasingly well, but that's much less true of everybody else, and especially it's less true of those from lower income backgrounds, working class boys and men, and black boys and men. You see many of those trends are amplified, and so those boys and men are really at the sharpest end of many of the social and economic changes. On the one hand, we have a huge and successful and laudable effort to get more women into STEM jobs, so science, technology, engineering, and math. On the other side, we have what I call HEAL jobs. So that's health, education, administration, and literacy, almost, if you like, the opposite side of the coin to STEM jobs. And that's where a lot of the jobs are coming from. Health and education alone are huge and growing sectors in the US. And so by my estimates, for every 1 job we're going to create in STEM between now and 2030, we're going to create 3 in HEAL jobs. But those jobs are at least as gender segregated as STEM jobs, but in the other direction. And unlike STEM, becoming more so over time. So if you look at the HEAL sector, only 24% of the workers in those sectors are male, and that number is falling. And in particular sectors, we're seeing a really precipitous drop in the number of men. We have a drop in the number of male teachers. We have a very sharp drop in the number of male psychologists. That's dropped from 39% male to 29% male in the last decade alone. And among psychologists under the age of 30, only 5% are male. So we roll that forward, and we're going to see psychology becoming essentially almost an all-female profession. So these jobs, which are both crucial, I think, for society, and where it'd be very useful to have more diversity, are actually becoming more gender segregated. And so we have absolutely no effort to get more men into HEAL jobs, which is where I think the future lies and where we should be helping men.
So, TechRel, right? Said men build, women invade, right? Now, the thing is, I need to get some more, like, I need to know what you mean by that, right? Because that is true. That is true. But the thing is, when I talk about the triangle, right? Men are at the top of the triangle, right? But the men put the women as a buffer between us and the top. See what I'm saying? So, of course, the elite are at the top. There's a reason why, and there's an agenda as to why women are outpacing men. This is not by accident. Okay, it's not by accident. But the thing is, we're gonna walk through it. We're gonna listen to these videos, see what he has to say, and we'll talk about that. I don't think we're gonna get into that tonight, but at some point we're gonna have to talk about that pyramid scheme, right? We could say women invade, but it's not necessarily true. They've been put in the position that they are in right now, to be honest. But let's see what else he has to say.
One of the problems that we face is what I call in the book a dad deficit. And that can be seen in various different ways. So 1 in 4 fathers don't live with their children. If parents split up, they're much more likely to lose contact with their fathers and with their mothers. And so 1 in 3 children, if their parents split up, don't see their father at all after a few years post the separation. So this fatherlessness is something that's very, very specific. And when 4 in 10 children are born outside marriage, and most children to less...
I think this is going to change as time moves on, though. I think men, and I don't think we need to stop having children. I know that really that's going to happen. That's going to happen. When you look at the number of men who are not only leaving the workforce or whatnot, but leaving the dating market and whatnot, they're not really looking for long-term relationships. And really it's what has to do, because men don't see women as competition in the economic market or in the workforce, but they really are competing. Okay, they're competing, and they're competing, like I said, because somebody gave them a leg up, right? So if you're playing basketball, right, and you're playing 5-on-2, right, the team with 5 is gonna have an advantage over the team with only 2 players. So they do have an advantage in many areas, right? But we'll get into that another time. But yeah. So let's see what else is.
Educated parents are born outside marriage, then we have to reinvent what it means to be a father. Because right now, men are still being held to an old standard of what it meant to be a successful father in a world where that is neither possible for many of them or even desirable. Because what we've seen is as women have grown in economic,
what it means to be a father, he said we got to reinvent what it means to be a father, and I think a big part of that is knowing how to fight in court. All right, so the way if men who are considering or trying to figure out how to get around the dating market right now, you got a lot of passport bros out there. They're going overseas to find themselves better options, but at the same time, you gotta have a lawyer. Especially a family lawyer, before the divorce. All right, because this is a business, and that is gonna be how we reinvent being fathers. Because we got to be able to fight in court. So let's see what else is.
economic power and economic independence, then of course they're going to choose to be with a man rather than being forced to, as in the old days. This is probably the greatest liberation in human history, honestly.
Yeah, and they're choosing, right? That's
whether to be with a
what
man
we
or
talk
not.
about a lot.
More than 2 out of 5 households in the US now, a woman is the main breadwinner. 40% of American women earn more than the average man. These are huge economic changes and all for the good. But it does pose some really sharp questions about what fathers are for. And until we escape the obsolete model of the breadwinner father, then we will continue to see more and more men being left out of family life. And the kicker is that boys in families that don't have a father presence suffer much more than girls. And so then what happens is that male disadvantage can become intergenerational, because if the fathers are struggling and therefore not really involved in their kids' lives, then the boys are the ones who suffer most, who will then go on to struggle themselves in education and the labor market.
So how much is left there? Pause.
It's clear by now.
I think that's good enough. But the way what I'm looking at really, when I watch these videos, I'm trying to see, like, is it by design or is it by accident? Is it something we didn't, that the powers that be, the government, do they not know? I know there's a lot of people who say obviously they know what's happening and they're doing it on purpose, but it's easy to say it, but really, when you look at it, what would be the motive to want to put one ahead of the other? Especially men. Men can benefit society in so many ways. I mean, I'm not gonna get into, men are men. We do a lot right now, right? Men do hold up society. Forget about if without men, society would not be able to run, period. So, and that's a fact. Because like I said, the jobs that people need to live, the truckers, the people who move your food from one place to another, the garbage men, the electricians, the people who keep your lights on, all these, without these people, you wouldn't be able to live. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot more to talk about. There's so many things to talk about when it comes to this topic. And I just wanted to look at this video tonight. And I want to know, let me know what y'all think in the comment section. And tomorrow we'll be back with another topic. I'm not sure what that topic is right now, but so we're gonna leave it at that, and we'll see y'all tomorrow night, probably 9-10 o'clock, but look out for us then. All right.